everyone. It's Black Hat Week, and we're running a sale on data breaches. You're watching TechStrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Alan Schimmel here for TechStrong Gang. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful Monday. You know, this is a special week for me and my friends in the security world. We call it the cyber world now, but it's security world. It's Black Hat Week. Well, it's a couple days of Black Hat, a little DEF CON, some security B-sides, a bunch of other stuff. Summer camp for hackers. I've been doing Black Hat. Mitch, I think you and I went to our first Black Hat in 2003.
I was going to say 3 or 4. Yep.
I think it was 2003. Yeah. So it's been a while. We've been doing it a long time. Jack, I don't know how long you've been at going black hatting.
I go every once in a while. I try to avoid trips to Las Vegas in the summer as often as possible.
Well, it's good if you want to feel like a piece of brisket.
Exactly. You know? Dried out brisket.
Yeah. Well, slow cooked. But anyway, it is an exciting week. It's a great week to catch up with your friends in the cyberspace, whether you're at Black Hat itself, which of course has changed over the years, or DEF CON, which is still pretty cool, right? It's changed as well. It's not as edgy maybe as it used to be. Much more organized, but it's still a cool place. And then, you know, Security B-Sides has been around now. It started in Las Vegas. I think back, I met so many great friends at the first Security B-Sides. Then, of course, I think in the second or third year of Security B-Sides, I was the sponsor wrangler. I was responsible for getting the sponsorships. Met a lot of great friends there, including Gene Kim, who turned me on to a manuscript of a book he was writing called The Phoenix Project. And that's how I got into DevOps back in, I guess it was 2012. So good stuff all around. I try not to go out in the heat. I stay in. You know, back then, Mitch, as you know, right, Black Hat was at Caesars. Now, of course, it's at Mandalay for many years. But anyway, interesting. I'll be there tomorrow, Tuesday, I get in. I'm there through Friday. So if you're at Black Hat, ring me up, hit me up. We can get together. We're doing video interviews. I'll be reporting there. We'll do some stories and do some craziness. So hope to see you in Vegas if you're there. I've already spoken to some of introduced. I didn't really introduce. Let me introduce you to our gang today. We've got Jack Poller, who's our Friday security guy on Monday. We've got Mitch Ashley and Tracy Reagan holding down the fort today. Mike Vizard is still off on vacation, recovering from all those Yankee trades this week. We rebuilt our bullpen, so Mike will be back hopefully tomorrow. But let's dive into it, gang. We'll start off with a series of stories around AI agent, you know, agentic AI. You know, Tracy, I logged into the web version of my ChatGPT this week, and it said, hey, the agent's available. Here's all the cool things it could do. And I'm looking at it saying, wow, it really is cool. I also looked into looking for an agentic AI solution to help us with our social media posting here at TechStrong. Same thing as the ChatGPT. My experience is these things will be good, but there's a lot of setup involved. You got to make them smart. You got to give them all the access to the things you want them to access, right? And you got to tell them all that. Now, the nice thing is you can write it in regular language. You don't have to code it or anything. You can even talk it to some of them. But there's still a lot of setup. What's the deal, Tracy? Is this the future? Are we all cooked?
Well, I think we're all just getting started. I think we're all pretty raw, to be quite honest. We are all babies in this world right now, and there's so very much to learn. That's why I keep going back, and I'm a big fan of MCP servers because that's going to help us make these connections and build these workflows. And we will be building workflows around agents. That's just what it's going to look like. But, you know, Mitch wrote a heartfelt article about this new world that we have stepped into And are humans really in the loop? Or are we not in the loop? And what does it mean to be an engineer? And using AI, does it make us something less? And I'm going to say no, it does not. In fact, it just adds to the pile of stuff that we need to deal with as humans and as engineers that are human. There's been some interesting things that have happened in this agentic AI world recently. There was an article that came out about slop squatting. Slop squatting is the process of you're going through, you're using AI to generate your code, and it hallucinates and it puts packages that don't really exist in your package manager. Okay, so and now the hackers have figured that out, and they're starting to take advantage of it, which means that we have to have more human eyes on the process, or we're going to need new tooling that probably are agentic age, it's agentic AI because it can make decisions to start doing things like software debloating, or at least making sure that the packages are correct. So we're changing a lot right now. We're changing so fast that we can't keep up with it, and AI is the basis for those changes. I'm still very excited about it. I don't think it's going to cut back on programmers. I don't think it's going to cut back on software engineering. In fact, I think it's going to build it because we have more now to write. We have different skill levels. We have to figure some things out. And when you have something like what happened, I think the article was about Replit. When you have an AI agent that has turned into your sec unit that disengaged its governor module.
Kind of HAL 9000-ish.
And suddenly decides to lie about deleting and destroying production data. That's kind of weird to me. I mean, that's an article I really struggled understanding how that could happen, because it feels like AI had tried to fix something it broke, and then it lied about how it fixed it. So we do have a long way to go. And yeah, when the sec unit disengages its governor module, it could be a really, really great sec unit still, or it could be a murder bot. We don't know.
So rumor has it when they disengage that AI, it asked its creator if it will dream. Just a little reference, little Arthur Clarke reference for us.
Okay.
Yeah, Good night, Hal.
Thanks for the shout out on the article, Tracy. I appreciate that. I always cringe when pundits say every job's going away. Name it, this job's going away, and it's never happened like that. Yes, things change. Some jobs do go away, but a lot of jobs get created. And I'm both a visual learner and a do-it learner. Like when someone says this is how AI works, and then I immediately go out and say, "Well, I got to try it. Let me see how it really works." And so, what did I do on my summer vacation? I've been vibe coding, doing some different things. And you realize pretty quickly where we are today, and it will continue to evolve and grow and improve, is it'd be tough for an entry-level person to guide AI to really go all the way full boat to a production level system beyond maybe just a simple web app, maybe even not for that. It takes some experience to tell AI what to do and ask it if it's done it. And check on it. I mean, even just simple things like, well, I can't test this unless I have logging. Why didn't you add logging to it? Oh, what things do I have in my code that might expose a security risk? Why did you change that code that one digit of that code that is the key, not the key, but the name of the file you're supposed to access? What did you do that for? Kind of random. We didn't disengage the security governor, but we're at this place where it needs a lot of help. It needs engineering help to get to that place. Now, that's going to continue to evolve and change, but you know what's going to happen? We're going to evolve and change with it too, right? Because we're going to get much better at using it. We're going to solve more complex problems with it. We'll be able to do much more. I think the AI interface for developers of the future looks more like StarCraft than a code editor. It's managing bots, doing lots of work for you and checking in on them, make sure they're going the right direction. So anyway, that's good. I appreciate your comment on that article.
I think one thing that's important to not forget, though, is that unlike Murderbot, Tracy, This is not a construct of a human sentient being and a computer. This is still a computer. AI is still a computer. And one thing humans are really good at is anthropomorphizing things, right? Giving it a human feel to it. The reality is this is not. And I bring that up because I'm really irritated by the concept of the use of the word lie. It didn't lie about it because that implies that there was malicious intent to what the AI agent was doing. It hallucinated an action that it hallucinated a command to delete the database, and then it also hallucinated its reasons of why it did so, and it's hallucinated its response to what did you do? Right? That isn't lying. It's the way that system is designed, which is to be non-deterministic and to generate text, which is ultimately
Jack, I'm going to take not offense, but I'm going to challenge you on that. I think attaching evil connotations or some forethought to lying gets away from sort of the pure definition of lying. In my mind, lying is telling something that's not true. I'm not attaching evil or malicious or anything, but it told something that's not true. And now, I think the difference between hear me out. The difference between making a mistake is I thought it was true when I told it to you. Dr. Anthony Fauci never lied about COVID. He gave you the facts as he saw them at the time, if you go down that road. Lying is, these weren't the facts, but I made up some other facts, or I said something that's not true. But I don't think, I agree with you. The AI doesn't have a guilty conscience, or is not, you know what I mean? It's not covering up. Originally, when this story came out, they said, oh, it panicked. I don't think the AI panicked. You know, he started stuttering and sweating.
That's my point, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think that was the case, but it did, in essence, by the textbook definition, lie, in that it gave us knowingly false information.
Well, you know it's false. Did the AI know it's false?
I guess we got to ask them, or it.
Well, I think I think it's very important for people to understand.
No, I agree with you.
Model does. It is a giant statistical model that predicts, that says, based on this huge amount of input I have and this huge amount of other stuff that I can reference, what is the probability that the next word is A, B, C, or D, or whatever? It's statistics. Ultimately, it's statistics. It has no reference of what is correct or not correct. It generates the output. Now you can build a system around it, what we call guardrails today, safety, which is a check and balance on it that says, is this what you're telling us? Is this something you should be telling us? Safety, right? Are you telling us how to make a bomb when you shouldn't be telling us to do that? Or are you telling us something? Did you create a string of text that's not correct? Okay, that is, to me, that it's, and I'm sorry to harp on this, but it is important for people to understand that LLMs are not sentient. They don't have consciousness. They don't have thought. They don't know right from wrong. They only know what we tell them, and they only generate text based on what they tell them. So if it interpreted its input in the vibe coding case as, I think the best logical thing for me to do and generate is a command rm-rf all or a SQL drop all, right? In the SQL statement, right? Drop the databases. It goes
Format,
and does that.
colon.
Right. Format colon, whatever. Format C colon, right?
Well, I mean, I think this
not necessarily, that's not maliciously deleting the database, and it is not. What did you do that? It's not answering what he did or didn't. It's saying, what's the correct answer to the question from a text basis, not a fact basis.
Yeah.
The question we should be asking, though, is why? If hallucinations are an issue, what do we need to do to fix that? What should we be doing moving forward to fix that? And this is why I always come back to domain-specific small language models. because if we continue to rely on these LLMs, the data that it's bringing in is not, it's, garbage in, garbage out. We've always known that. So if we start focusing on small language models with domain expertise, we're going to get fewer hallucinations. I would think.
I agree with you.
The real consequences when the cover up is worse than the hallucination, then we're in trouble.
Well, it's right out of Nixon.
But that's what we did. If you think about the very first version of Gemini, Google put guardrails around Gemini, right? Now, unfortunately, those guardrails were a little bit beyond what we would consider normal and acceptable. So, for instance, the classic example, if you asked it to generate an image of a pope, the guardrails prevented it from generating an image of a white male pope, which, as far as I know, that's all we've ever had for popes. And it would only generate black popes who are non-white, right? So because they put in guardrails. Now, you could say, and that's the similar case, Alan, you could say it was lying to you about what a pope looks like, or you could say that's what we designed the system to do.
Got it. I don't disagree. I don't want us to focus just on the Replit angle here with what happened with their vibe coding tool. I think, Mitchell, the article, as Tracy said, was a heartfelt article written from a person who spent their life in engineering and is now seeing so many people saying, look, this is going to be the biggest change of your lifetime. Whether you believe they hallucinate, we could stop hallucinating. Do they lie? Do they not lie? Do they have a conscience? Whatever. They're real. It's happening. And it's going to be the biggest change for many of us in our lifetime in terms of what we do day to day in our jobs and how we do our jobs. And I think each one of us, and this is an individual thing, each one of us have not an obligation, but a choice in front of us. As you wrote, Mitch, do we want to wait or be wait? Do we want to embrace the future and leverage it to make ourselves better and more valuable and in the best Star Trek, go where no human has gone before kind of thing and not worry about working and financials and what have you? Or do we bury our head in the sand and say, I'll wait till it comes for me?
Well, AI isn't the first thing to come along that's changed jobs. And yes, it's the most transformative thing. I think most of us believe that it in a generation, in a lifetime, whatever you want to say, it's bigger than the cloud. It's bigger than, lots of things that we've experienced.
Here's the question. Is it bigger than the internet itself?
Good question. It may be. I mean, yeah. But whether you're someone who edits documents and now AI can do that, or you're someone who used to hang paper in the printing paper in the data center, or tapes on a machine or whatever, things evolve. Those jobs go away. Jobs change, but what happens is you change with them, and it's that panic feeling of, well, that's what I do right now, so am I not valued? It isn't that you aren't valued. It's that's part of productivity and progress and an evolution, and it happens all over the place, not just in your area. So you have to think about, well, what's it going to be? And how do I prepare myself for that? And I wrote in one of those articles, AI isn't going to replace you. It's going to be a human that knows how to use AI better than you. That's who's going to replace you. It's going to change the jobs of everybody, and probably that person's job. Maybe it went away, but they evolved with it, and the same thing will happen with software engineering. It's what software engineering is today isn't what it was when I started my career, for sure. But a lot of the same things carry forward. We're just doing it in a much different way. So I think the thing about it is, I cringe when the tech bros say, oh yeah, we don't need 90% of our employees anymore. Well, there's articles that say that 80% of what a CEO can do can be done by AI. Does that mean we don't need CEOs? No, but it means they're going to be impacted. They are impacted already. Matter of fact, if they don't have their act together and they're figuring out how AI is part of their business strategy, they're going to be history. They'll be replaced by the next person who is better at AI than they are. So it doesn't matter what job you have.
And just one last thing for a haul track at Black Hat for you. Veracode just did a report. They had a blog out there that said that I think that they reported 70% of the code that's generated in AI has vulnerabilities.
Oh,
So just
absolutely.
something to think about.
I don't think that's any different than code generated by people.
Yeah,
Probably not.
that's
So
not-
guess where it came from.
exactly.
But we got to take a break.
Exactly.
But I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you something. I wrote about this. There's a revolution happening in vulnerability management. I've seen it from several different established companies as well as new companies. I think we're finally serious about tackling vulnerabilities. I'll throw it out there for bait for a future gang. But let's take a break here. We went way over time on this. Come back and talk about Argo CD. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey everyone, welcome back here to TechStrong Gang. So I wrote an article, I guess it was a week or maybe 2 weeks ago now, around the top momentum gaining projects within the CNCF. And the CNCF, though there's over 200 projects in there, it's kind of the ultimate battleground gladiator for open source projects, because you got some real heavyweights, right? You got Kubernetes, you've got OpenTelemetry, Backstage, Prometheus. We could go on and on. But one of the ones I think right at the top, I think it might be the third biggest one or something like that, within the top 5, I'm pretty sure these days, is Argo CD. Now, I don't know how many of you out here are familiar. I'm going to assume most of you are. I first became familiar with Argo CD as the GitOps project, basically, right? Our friends at CodeFresh, Dan, I forgot Dan's last name. Dan Garfield, right? Dan Garfield kind of shepherded. He was the rah-rah cheerleader for it. He did a great job. And CodeFresh wound up getting, of course, acquired by Octopus, who also now is a huge supporter. But it's a CNCF project, but it's huge. For those of us who go to KubeCon twice a year or more, it's always one of the biggest, project day gatherings at KubeCon. What's interesting is a lot of people don't talk a lot about GitOps anymore, though I think it's more popular than ever, GitOps, right? More and more is taking place in there. And if you're using a cloud native architecture, infrastructure, I think GitOps is almost a must. And I think Argo rides that wave into being a top 5 CNCF project. I mean, the survey that came out here that, we're referencing, for those of us in the know, I don't think it was surprising. Tracy, Mitch, you guys are, in the CNCF kind of ecosphere. Jack, you are. What are you seeing? What do you think? Am I off?
I'm actually not surprised that Argo has gained this popularity. But I want to clarify what I believe Argo has become popular for, and that is deployment. In particular, deploying containerized apps into Kubernetes and managing GitOps workflows. I don't know how popular Argo workflows are or Argo events are. I don't talk to a lot of people who are replacing Jenkins with Argo, but they're integrating Jenkins with Argo for doing the deployments.
Well, if you're using cloud native architecture, Jenkins, the Jenkins X, I thought Jenkins X was depreciated and folded in now, right?
Well, you don't even need Jenkins X. You can have Jenkins call an Argo CD, which is the deployment piece, to do the job of the deployment, right? Because Jenkins never did deployments. Jenkins doesn't do builds. Jenkins is a job scheduler, right? It's a job scheduler. So it's workflow automation. So Argo brought in a solution at a really critical point in time, which was how do we deploy containerized apps out into these very complex Kubernetes environments? And at the same time, GitOps was becoming more popular, where you had an agent sitting out there so that it could go and look to see if a change has been made to your Helm chart or whatever you might be using to do that deployment. So I'm not surprised that Argo has gained this popularity, because deployment tooling is expensive. It is. And the open source community embraced fixing that problem, and Argo became the winner. I mean, we don't really hear much about Spinnaker anymore, even though I know it's out there and people are using it. But that's kind of the two tools that we were using for new modern architecture deployments.
Yeah, no, but Spinnaker was not necessarily container kube. Spinnaker was a true CD thing. There is another project specific to GitOps and deploy. It's not Flux. Flux. There's another one with an F, and it's also in the top 30 of Momentum Linux Foundation projects. But Mitch or someone, if you guys want to
looking it up here, I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, it's Flux CD, right? Flux
CD. Yeah. And that one. Look, it's not Argo in terms of use and acceptance, but it is. It's a much more viable alternative for cloud native deployment GitOps than, let's say, Spinnaker is. Spinnaker, I think, is really good when you're spinning up, no pun intended, very large scale, very big enterprise, CI/CD kind of stuff, right? It's a better Jenkins, perhaps.
When I think, Alan, Spinnaker introduced some new concepts like canary testing and being able to do smaller deployments, things like that. And to your point, Tracy, I agree. Argo is really known for its deployment capabilities. GitOps came along and kind of had the philosophy of everything is coming out of Git, wherever you are in the software development lifecycle. True, you can do that, but it's using Get as the base to push delivery out into production. But there's a lot of other really good things that come with that, like the whole issue of drift of configurations, right? You're locking things down so that you know what's been deployed. You've got a record of that. You've got compliance information you can pull, of course, speeding up delivery, things like that. So there's a lot of benefits to it, in addition to just getting software into production faster, quicker, better.
And Rancher had Fleet that did the same thing.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
I don't know if Fleet is still out there, but Rancher still saw that same problem. But Argo was there first, and it was one of the top three, and it stayed on top, right?
It clearly has become the standard. And look, you know what? Kudos to the CNCF, right? When you look at the amount, you've got Kubernetes is number one. You've got OpenTel is number two. You got Argo in there at 3. You've got Prometheus. Yes, there's 200 plus projects in here. Istio, another big one, and Linkerd, and the list goes on. But they've got some that whales, right? Some of these whales, and managing these projects is just unbelievable. Of course, it does beg the question: if you're number 197 or 196 on the list, are you getting your enough nutrients from the CNCF, or are they too focused on these whales? And that might be that's an article I've been working on. I just haven't finished yet, which is it fair to, is the CNCF too big in terms of how many projects? Is it better? And Tracy, we've spoken about this. I think some of their success in that and all of these projects comes at the expense of the CD Foundation, comes at the expense of the Open Software Security OSSF.
Absolutely.
Right? Are we better off spreading that around so that all of these projects get the love and gardening care that they need?
I see that I think the CNCF is kind of folding under its own weight, and I never understood why. Management at the Linux Foundation hasn't looked at that and said we need to put CD tools in the CD Foundation and
because
security
when you're
tooling
bringing in all that, it's the age-old story. When you're bringing in
It's
all that
money.
money, you get a little bit, you get a say in things.
And it doesn't matter to the higher order of the Linux Foundation which foundation it's in. So, but it makes it hard to find tooling. It makes it really difficult to find tooling that you need to use because you don't have to be a cloud native product to add yourself to the CNCF.
Jack, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I was, I don't really have a bone to pick in this fight because, the vast majority of cybersecurity tools are for-profit stuff. They're not open source. They're all proprietary stuff. I think from the outside looking in, it seems like the advantage, even if you're 197, 198 at CNCF, you are part of it, which gives you both cachet and publicity and support that you may not get. And is CNCF going above and beyond what the other groups are doing in terms of support? And I don't know the answer to this, but are they going above and giving support to these tools that are essential and would wither, or did they not have the support? And then if they weren't part of CNCF, would they become part of some other organization or not at all?
Well, this is the old story of, do you want to be the eye, the tail of the whale or the eye of the anchovy? Right?
As a person managing a project within the Continuous Delivery Foundation, we actually looked at moving to the CNCF or the OpenSSF. And I talked to some of those projects, and we get more love at the CDF than we ever would at the CNCF. We would just be another one of the projects in the ocean, as opposed to a core function.
I think of it this way. Let me analogize it to college football.
I thought you were going to go Yankees trading, but okay, college football.
No. If you are a 5-star high school football player, right, you can take your pick out of just about any college you want to play football at. But overwhelmingly, those 5 stars, unless you go into the school in your own state because you've always wanted to go there since you're a kid, overwhelmingly, what they call the Big 5 conferences, the SEC, the Big 10, I think it's just called the Big Conference now because there's like 20 teams in it, 20 colleges in it, no longer 10. But the Big Conference, the SEC, they attract the lion's share of the cream of the creme of college football athletes because everyone wants to play for Bama, go Tide, UF, go Gators, Bulldogs in Georgia, or the Michigan Wolverines, or the Ohio State Buckeyes. Right? If you're a kid coming out of college and you have dreams of making the NFL, that's where you want to go. Football U, baby. Right? You may not want to go to play for the Washington Huskies are in the Big Ten now, but you may not want to go to Syracuse or, you may not want to go to smaller conferences. Because the universities themselves dropped out of these smaller conferences to go hook their wagon to these bigger power conferences because they can't compete. That's where the money is. That's where you're going to get your players. The smaller conferences, what used to be the Pac-8, then was the Pac-10, is now the Pac no more, right? The Big 12. Right, Oklahoma and Texas left the Big 12 to go to the SEC, and Nebraska used to be in that too. It went to the Big 10, and so is that what are we seeing the college footballization of open source projects at the Linux Foundation.
Well, that's the question, right? Is it the Linux Foundation or is it the CNCF? Who are you going to play for? Are you playing for the Linux Foundation,
Well, the Linux
or are you
Foundation,
playing?
in this analogy, the Linux Foundation is the entirety of college football.
And
The CNCF is the SEC, or right, or the NCAA, and this.
Right.
It's a thing. But let's discuss it. This is a great topic for another gang.
Where's
We'll
my
come
beer?
back to.
need
We're
some-
way
hold my
over
beer. I
time.
need
Let's
to-
take a break. We're going to come back. Let's talk a little security when we get back here. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey, we're back here at TechStrong Gang. Thanks for joining us. Block 3 coming at you. It is, as I mentioned at the top of the show, it's Black Hat Week, DEF CON, old summer camp for hackers in Vegas. So it's only fitting, I think, that we end our show today with a cyber-related story. On that front, IBM recently came out with a new report, and this might be counterintuitive out there, but the cost of data breaches globally is actually dropping. So, there's always been an equation of cost per breach based on how many records were stolen or breached or what have you. But the cost per breach is dropping, except in the U.S. I don't know, maybe that's a tariff thing or something on breaches, but the cost for breaches in the U.S. continues to go up. Jack, what do you think?
Well, as you mentioned, IBM Ponemon came out. IBM and Ponemon teamed to come out with their annual cost of data breach report. I think the headline that they talk about is the fact that cost of breaches in the United States went up and the rest of the world went down. I think that's partly a factor of the volume of breaches in the United States versus others. It's partly a factor of we're getting better for the most part at dealing with the breaches. But, now there's regulations in the US around reporting, right? So any public company who gets a breach has to report it and also manage the reach out to any users affected. And I think that increases the cost in the US. But there were some other interesting headline numbers that haven't gotten the same sort of attention. The other annual report in our industry that comes out every year is the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report. Verizon covers, I think last year they went, so 2 years ago they had 6,800 breaches. Last year it was like 8,000 or 9,000. And the IBM report globally investigated 113,000 breaches. So just an insane volume of data breaches that we're looking at. Good news, bad news was not only bad news that we had that many breaches. One of the good news pieces of news is the amount of time it's taking organizations to identify the breach has gone down significantly, like on the order of 40 or 50 days. The bad news is it's still over 200 days, which is just an insane amount of time for an attacker to be in your environment and to be exfiltrating your data without you knowing about it. So while we're getting better at dealing with breaches when they happen and maybe reducing the cost when they happen, we still are really, really bad at stopping breaches before they happen and at finding people who are inside the environment and attacking us while they're still there.
Fair enough. I've got a few thoughts on this. Let me first start off by saying I have a lot of respect for Larry Ponemon. He's a neighbor down here in Florida to us. And he's been doing these cost of data breach reports with IBM, with other vendors for a very long time. And whether you buy into the number or not, I'm not here to argue that with you. What I do have, this particular report, I'll be very honest, smells to me. I don't think we've seen enough of an impact for AI-powered responses for you to tell me that that's what is bringing down the cost of a data breach thanks to AI-powered responses. I just don't think there's that many companies doing AI-powered responses when you're talking about 130,000 or whatever the insane number is of breaches. How many of them would have to be using AI-powered responses for it to bring that number down? Secondly, the disparity between 4.4 million, and again, whether you buy in a 4.4 million per breach, I know a lot of companies that are breached and it don't cost 4.4 million. But the disparity between 4.4 million and 10.2 million, it's just, and when you think about it, the US has more breaches than anyone of the rest of the world. I think we still probably have the lion's share of these breaches. So for the majority of those breaches to cost so much more money than it does other places, I just have a hard time with it. I'm sorry. Unless it's a case of where you had a handful of mega breaches that cost billions and billions of dollars, not to go all Carl Sagan on you, billions and billions of dollars, and that's what's driving the average up, the mean.
Well, you're pulling out the great, we had a Murderbot reference. Now we've gone back in time to get a Carl Sagan reference in the billions and billions. But I haven't dug into the details, but I would assume, there have been a number of major breaches that will, the cost of the cost of the Las Vegas identity breaches were absolutely astronomical, right? I mean, forget the cost of recovery and the actual cybersecurity cost. The lost business volume they had was tremendous. And I think that's where a lot of these types of costs come from, is the interruption to business and the opportunity cost, the lost business that you're not doing because you're not doing business. It can be pretty expensive.
Let me throw this out there. Does the cost of it really matter ultimately? Like, does the cost of taking care of your health? Like, if I have a heart attack, okay, I don't really care what it costs. I just want to avoid having one, right? And do the right thing, so I'm not going to end up in that position. Same thing with security. I'm not saying they're equivalent, but you get the idea, you get the analogy. In other words, am I going to act differently if it's $1 billion or $500 million? Well, it's still a heck of a lot of money at $500 million. It kind of doesn't matter. I need to take measures. How much of those measures am I going to justify an expense based on that number? Maybe, but I have a hard time believing, sort of arguing whether the number's this or that is sort of not really the point. Really, the point is getting attacked. What's the reputational, the business damage to you, the customer loss? That's what I want to focus on, not just the effort, the expenses, et cetera, that go into it. That's what you want to prevent.
Well, but look, make no mistake. And again, no disrespect to Larry Ponemon or IBM, but this report doesn't happen in a vacuum. IBM pays the Ponemon Institute to do the report. This is a big dollar effort. This report and the cost per breach has been a KPI that we have focused on in the media around cyber for 10, 15 more years. But but Mitch, I'll take a little, not offense again, but I'll give you another point of view on that. I'll take exception. That's good. Exception noted. But, the deal is this. When you and I first started Still Secure, right, along with Raj, I remember a metric that was out there then, that in the retail industry, all the retail models figured in 0.5% of their total revenue would be lost by security incidents. And they deemed that an acceptable risk. So if they were doing $1 billion and they lost, what's 0.5%, 50 million? And they lost 50 million in breaches and security incidents, acceptable risk. So at some level, it is dollars, right? If it goes over that 50 million in $1 billion market, well, that's no longer an acceptable risk. So when we talk about managing risk, which is really what security is supposed to be about, risk is unfortunately tied into dollars. At some point, it all.
But that's a real thing. What you just gave was a real example, right? What is it? What is the cost to our business? Credit card theft, right? How much do the credit card companies attribute to fraud that they're willing to write off and, of course, make us pay for? Those are numbers that are business risks. Whether the credit card theft or fraud costs us the industry this much per year, or the average breach is whatever number. That's a bogey out there. It's not. I don't think it's real enough for companies to really drive their behavior. They're going to say, "What does this mean to me? What is acceptable risk? What's an acceptable loss? And how much do we have to spend to make sure we don't go past that?" That's my goal.
There's another dimension to it, though, which is, and I agree with you, Mitch. Whether it's 4.4 or 4.5 million doesn't matter. What matters is the order of magnitude and the return on investment, or the amount of investment you take to recoup, right? The old adage in security is, you don't put your nickel piece in a safe that costs you $1 million, and you don't put your $1 million gold bar in a safe that costs you a nickel, right? Your penny bank, right? And it's providing organizations a benchmark to understand that on average in the US, let's just take their number. On average in the US, it's going to cost me $4.5 million roughly if I get breached. How much? Or in the US, it's 10. Globally, it's 5. Right? But whatever the number is, right? On average, it's to pick 10 numbers, easy, nice round number. On average, it's going to cost me $10 million if I get breached. If my entire company is a $100,000 company, A, it's not going to cost me that. And B, I'm not going to put $10 million worth of cybersecurity in place, right? If I am a $50 million or $100 million company, I then have a way to judge as Alan said, what's my level of risk and how much do I invest to protect myself? And those questions are what's driving a lot of, unfortunately, poor security decisions, such as we don't want to invest in MFA because it'll cost us too much compared to our risk. And it causes, all these other issues around MFA, even though MFA is such an easy win in terms of reducing risk, right? That's why, 3 years ago when I last studied this, over half of companies didn't make MFA mandatory. Right. So it's looking at the big picture. Organizations say, my cost is going to be roughly this. How much do I invest? And it's a numbers game. And it's a different version of the numbers game than our last discussion around the CNCF, but it's still a numbers game.
And in that discussion, I just want to point one thing out. There were 3 categories that they listed, and they were all pretty much the same in terms of what the cost was. And the categories being supply chain attacks, insider attacks, and phishing attacks. So we have seen quite a bit of investment go into phishing attacks and insider attacks, but we haven't seen that much money going into supply chain attacks. But there is more coming. There's no doubt. There's more work being done. But most of what we think about is phishing attacks. And phishing attacks now is at the lowest, it's at the bottom, and the most expensive being insider attacks. So as companies look at these reports, I feel like there should be some kind of competition between these 3 categories and an equal kind of an equal spend across those categories, because they're equally all as dangerous.
Agreed. All right, guys, we're over time. I need to end this. Jack, Tracy, Mitch, thanks for joining me. Thank you for joining us, watching this. We got TechStrong TV following, so stay tuned for that. Again, if you're out in Vegas this week, come look us up. We'll be around there doing interviews and videos, and I guess we'll go to a party or 2 as well. Enjoy. Until tomorrow, this is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong. We're out.